It is Midnight Connections time. And I've been bringing on some life coaches, but I interact with so many amazing people. And being in the marketing business, I meet photographers, I meet artists, illustrators, and I even meet writers. So I am very excited to bring on, give me 1 second. This is Margreit.
Yeah, how are you?
Hi, I am so excited to have a writer on. You're actually my first writer I've ever had on Midnight Connections.
Oh gosh, I hope I can handle the pressure. Oh no.
But everyone has an interesting story, and you have a really amazing, I always ask people to give me a little bio information and everything. We actually, to be completely honest, we just met recently through a networking group. Networking is amazing and everything. But sometimes you just click with people, and I definitely felt a clicky connection, and I'm like, I need to have you on Midnight Connections and everything. So, I said I labeled this "Staying the Course." So I guess you have a series and everything, and I'm sure. Why don't you just start off a little bit about you and this your book series and what staying the course means?
Well, I actually, I don't know. I tend to ramble on a little bit. So I don't know if I keep it tight or whatever. I'm just going to.
You can ramble.
Yeah. So, I have this incredible story about an ancestor, my grandfather's grandfather. So my great grandfather, Robert. I didn't know anything about him most of my life. And about a year before my grandfather passed, he gave me the 25 type pages about Robert, along with, then once again, I'm doing a promo, and I forget to bring the little shoe, but it's a little wooden shoe. It's made out of mahogany in the shape of a Victorian shoe. And it was a treasured trinket for Robert, my great grandfather. And he passed it down through the generations. So my grandfather was passing it to me. He gave me the story. And then I took the story, I put it in the filing cabinet, and I took the little shoe and I put it, in my trinket place of honor. And about a year after that, he passed. And then 2 years later, my grandmother passed. And when my sister and I were writing the eulogy for my grandmother, I remembered the story. And so I pulled it out of the cabinet and I read it, and it blew me away. Like, I just couldn't believe everything that Robert went through. And it's a miracle he survived it all. So it started germinating in my head for, again, a number of years. And when my kids were still small, I thought, I've always wanted to write a book. Anybody that knew me in high school or college, I read voraciously. I adored getting lost in a story. It was definitely an escapism for me. And I read all kinds of stuff, espionage, romance, trashy beach stuff, detective novels. I read everything, right? So it just started germinating in my head. And I went to a mother center group. I was active in my community, and the group was Wife, Mother, Who Am I? And one of the women in the group said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So we all went around, and then I had mentioned that I had this ancestral story and that I really wanted to write a book. And as if she channeled my grandfather, at least my grandfather was like speaking through her to me. And she said, what's stopping you? And I said, I can't even answer that question because I don't know what's stopping me. I'm stopping me. I'm caught up in getting through the next 5 minutes. And I've been doing that for 23 years since I became a mom, like most moms. And so I just that week started whittling away at it. And that was back in 2007. So it was kind of this hobby thing from my regular career, which was part-time mom, kind of stuff. And I whittled away. Then I joined a critique group. And then I just learned so much more about writing. I was terrified of using dialogue because it was mid-1800s time period. And I just kept learning. And through the critique group, they were like, how come the characters never talk to each other? And I'm like, I'm afraid of dialogue, so they're like, we need it, So I started reading books about writing books. and I started educating myself, and I stepped outside my comfort zone in many, many ways, developing the story. And and I think through it, I became a really, really good writer. And I really had the goal of telling the story with honor. So having said all of that, the story itself is that Robert was number 8 of 12 children on the east coast of England. And the father had died in some accident, and his oldest brother was just beating him up all the time. And he had a promise beating coming to him. And according to the journal, he said, "I've had enough." And he just took off in the middle of the night with a friend, ran to the nearest port, which was Hull. England at the time was a British naval port, and also a big whaling port. It was 1849, and they shimmied along the anchor chain, and they climbed in the hawser hole, and they hid in a lifeboat thinking it was a cargo ship. They didn't know. They couldn't read. They couldn't swim. They were like, "We're just going to wing it." And that's what he did. And they got found in the lifeboat by one of the mates, one of them. And so they got roared at and disciplined and whipped a little bit and terrified and pressed into service. And so at age 12, he went from the fire into, or from the pan into the fire rather, and just ended up in the middle of this crazy wooden world, and traveled all over the world, all over the oceans, having an incredible, getting lost in a jungle, the Crimean War, South Pacific, whaling, I mean, firing cannons, all kinds of stuff. And he went around the Horn at the base of South America 4 times and somehow survived it, and made it to San Francisco, and then walked for 10 years east from San Francisco to Nebraska, which is the 3rd book, which I haven't written yet. So I have an outline, but I haven't really written it. So it was an incredible adventure in research, in learning about myself, and learning about my family, about him. And I really found help in different like that you wouldn't have expected. My local library, I found a librarian in England who helped me. The director of U.S. Naval History, if you didn't know that we had that, we do have that. And he was very helpful. And it's been an incredible journey. And I feel really proud of it. And I feel like my grandparents would be proud of it. And it feels like a huge accomplishment, but it was hard.
I'm all ready to see it on Netflix. Like, we need to have a screenplay and the actors lined up and everything.
Yeah, like it's kind of like Master and Commander has got to be one of my favorite movies. I'm a Russell Crowe fan, and that movie in and of itself is fantastic, but even though it was set about 100+ years before when I was writing, it's still Age of Sail. It still had a lot of the same references. Not much had changed in ship technology between Napoleon era and the mid 1800s. So it gave me every visual reference I could have dreamed of. I mean, even when they stopped at the Galapagos, it gave me an idea of what these guys did when they had an experience like that. And I was able to translate that to the experience that Robert had in the South Pacific when they stopped at an island and stayed with missionaries for a while. So it was, it was a lot of, yeah.
It's a good saying, stay the course, because also, like, we're in such a society that we want immediate gratification, and we get so depressed. Like, it's just, depression is just so easy and everything, because we are in a society of this immediate, but, you know, when they say have appreciation and everything, you don't have that appreciation unless you stay the course. Like, when you think back that seeds are planted, people always say the thing, but, you know, the saying, but it is so true. Like, seeds are planted in all ways, not only like business and everything, but just like dreams and goals and aspirations. And you just have to stay the course. And
staying the course can be really, really difficult. I mean, when my grandfather gave me that story, he didn't say write a book. He didn't say find a way to tell Robert's story so everybody knows about it. It just evolved, but it was an inheritance. So even if nobody ever bought the book, it was the best inheritance I could have ever asked for. from my
Well, what I
grandfather.
love reading is, I mean, you clearly already had a passion. You said, like in high school, like I had a passion for art. I always did art, and I didn't know
Mhm.
that I would now be doing a YouTube channel and social media marketing later on.
Who knows?
You
Yeah.
know, that figure drawing would lead to there. but
Yeah.
but I also love the fact that, um you now do stuff with kids and creative writing and
Mhm.
everything. So it sounds like not only this personal book, it has expanded into many, many different outlets.
Yeah, and it's just the creative writing program really was born out of the school administrators telling me to create something of value to do author visits in the schools. And because it's historical fiction, action adventure, and it's based on a true story, I decided to write it for younger readers. So it's really for age 9 and 10. But a lot of my readers are actually grown-ups and they love it. And everybody that reads my book says it belongs on a screen. So I did actually have a friend of mine who's a very talented screenplay writer, which by the way is a completely different kind of writing from novel writing. And I can't do screenplays. So he wrote a treatment for me, which is actually not even about Robert's story by itself, but more like my writer's journey and the turmoil of my life. And it kind of switches back and forth between that and Robert turmoil. And it's transferring time, gender, like he's a young boy, I'm a grown mom, like, and it was just, it kind of weaves that way. And so that's one option. Another option is just do his story, which in and of itself is quite incredible. And if he didn't survive it, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
That's
Right.
like, that's the craziest thing.
Right.
And
And
I often think it would be a great animated series. So I'd love to turn it into a graphic novel and take it in that direction for sure. But I learned a lot about myself, and there were definitely people like, "What are you doing writing a book?" Or shouldn't you be doing what you have been doing, in the financial industries? Like, shouldn't you be doing that? Well, of course I am doing that, but I'm also doing this other thing. So it also fed the creative part of my mind. And it was hard. I definitely had people kind of naysaying or dismissing it. And I just kept hearing my grandfather's voice. He used to say, "That's cooking on the front burner." But he would only say it if you actually were cooking on the front burner and accomplishing it. So when I started to feel discouraged, I would just think about that and know that if I was going to cook on the front burner, I had to finish it.
right. Right.
And it also helped me grow a thick skin. You get a lot of constructive criticism, and it's very scary. I mean, if you did art, right, it's scary
Right.
to create something and put your heart and soul into it and then put it out into the universe where it's not a friend, it's not a family that might be a little bit more kind about
We
construction.
had a we had a professor in college that would take a lighter and he
Mhm.
would light mock-ups in the building, in the school building. He was like,
Yikes.
and he would just, burn your work if he didn't like it.
Oh my God, that's awful. I'm not sure what he was trying to go with that, but yeah.
Make a statement.
Yeah, yeah. But I just think, you learn about yourself when you go through adversity. And it's all about how you handle it.
Well,
You
I love
can't.
the fact that you got, I was serious when I said the Netflix thing, but I love the fact that you're already thinking because, you know, we used to have print, and that's another thing I think is different in society these days. You would do a book, and books are still good. I'm not, you're right, I'm not devaluing the book, but a book was a printed piece and it was done. But now we're like, it could be a podcast, it can be a cartoon, it can be,
Mhm.
it can live in so many different formats these days. And it's
Yeah.
like
And
nothing ever is done now these days. Before, like when she printed it, the expense of printing a book and it was
oh yeah,
done.
they don't do that anymore. I mean, I mean, unless you're like a super famous person and they know you're going to sell tens of thousands of books. But like here's the first book. Here's the first book. But it's print on demand. So
Yeah,
they only print what people want in paperback. Otherwise, it's digital.
right. But it's like then a project can like never end, and it, can just go on and take on so many legs and
Mhm.
everything. It
Oh,
becomes
absolutely. And when I'm doing creative writing, so the program I created for schools it has different units so that teachers could mix and match kind of a la carte. But the ones I've done for libraries, rather than take kids through that kind of structure, what I decide to do is I just get a whiteboard, a chalkboard, a flip chart. I'm a little bit old fashioned about it in person. And I've actually done this in Zoom as well with a whiteboard. And I just draw a blank story arc. And I just say, okay, we're going to create, what story do we want to create? And the kids just call it out. And we create characters on the fly, and we create obstacles and climaxes and adversity and things that character has to come up with, and antagonists. And they're literally like, they actually have a lot of fun with it because they just call it out, and I write it out and I say, well, what's getting in the way? And I talk to them about the world building, and anything goes when you're building a world,
right.
as long as it's consistent. So you've just got to make sure your reader can understand it and can immerse themselves in it. So if it's inconsistent, it doesn't have good, there's science in world building, right? What kind of plant life, what kind of language, how do characters communicate, whether it's animals or trees or humans or non-humans, like whatever it is. So that I took that, and then I developed just a big boot camp for grown-ups. So from there, I went really deep into the research of what it takes to develop a story, a concept, genre, point of view, all of the little structural things that go into the story. But I often talk to the kids about the movies, and I'll ask them, what movies did they watch? And getting lost in a movie, it's visual. But if the writing is terrible and the script is terrible, it doesn't matter. Sometimes a good performance can kind of pull out of a bad script, but if the writing's not good, you're not going to get lost in it. So I often connect the kids to something visual that they've seen, and I remind them that the background of that starts with writing.
Yeah, my son likes to write, and he's very into Dungeons and Dragons. So when you say there's rules, like anything can happen, but there's rules to the character and everything. And then he's also like into computer science, so in Minecraft. But it's like when he's doing these things in Minecraft, I'm just glad he's not doing all the blow 'em up games. He does that too, but I'm just saying he has to know like physics and stuff. So it's kind of like how you have to do the research and the history behind your books. It's nice when you have the creativity, but you're like, okay, what is the logic and the science, like you said, behind this? And then you can put the two worlds together, because then it makes learning fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we could have upside down clouds and red rain or green rain, or people could walk on their ears. Like it really doesn't matter as long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
But my kids too. I actually loved the Minecraft. I thought it was so creative. So my son spent a lot of time on Minecraft and games like Portal. The blow it up games too, unfortunately, but listen, they have fun with it, and they put it in the right place. And so it's all good. But the Minecraft, the Portal, the puzzle games, like those were all good. When we did like the ocean ones, where it was before virtual reality, right? This is going back 15 some odd years, whatever, but it was the infancy of that. And it would take you through the ocean and have all the mammals and the fish and everything kind of go by you. So it's really imaginative what goes into these games.
Yeah.
But really, even a game starts with writing. The stories, like my kids are watching their games, but they're not even playing. They're watching the story. So they're still writing there. Right. And so it's important, but just kind of getting back to staying the course, right? It's easy to get discouraged. Like I launched my first book and the whole world shut down 4 weeks later. So all my book signings were canceled. I was trying to get my foot in the door with schools and author visits and get my book on the reading list. Wasn't happening. It was just, we were just trying to figure out, and I thought it was going to be 2-3 weeks, and it turns out to be, 18 months, 24 months, however long it was a long time. So you have to just plow through and find another avenue, find another way to reach people. And you can't, you can get discouraged. You have moments of discouragement, but it's how you handle it.
Right.
So
Right.
you can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond.
Right.
And if you respond and you're angry all the time, that's toxic and it's not productive. And you're going to end up on the hamster wheel and you're never going to get off, and you're not going to reach your goals. So it's teaching yourself how to pull out of that disappointment or anger or whatever that negative emotion is, which is normal. We're supposed to feel negative emotions, right? But we have to figure out how to spin out of it. For sure.
I moved closer to the beach like 8 years ago, so I love the water and everything,
Mhm.
and I love the metaphors, staying the course, and you got to weather the storm, and you won't see the rainbow unless you weather the storm, and all of those sayings. So I think it's incredible. And so the 2 books are out now, correct? And you can.
Yeah, so I've the Runaway at Sea is the first one, and then the second one's Adventure at Sea. And I have a short prequel, which gives a little of Robert's backstory. And the third book, which is, forthcoming.
Well, I know it's coming soon, and I'm excited. And I put your links so people can order the books in the description and everything. And I always call this Midnight Motivation. You are definitely a motivational person. I think you've encouraged everyone to stay the course. And I think it's really important, I don't know. It's like everyone's like, become a doctor or a lawyer and everything. So I just think it's very important to inspire the writers, the illustrators, the artists, the drama, the actors. It's very hard. The songwriters, just all the creative fields.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I started thinking I wanted to be in retail merchandising. I went to college for retail merchandising and marketing, and I wanted to open my own store and create my own clothing line. And, I did a little bit of theater in high school and all of that. And, I ended up in a completely different field, and like now I'm writing. So it's, you just because you start one place doesn't mean that's where you're going to end up, and things can morph. My mom had 3 careers. My sister has had businesses and in different areas. I mean, I have a lot of examples in my family of pivoting and changing and following a goal or a dream and just, evolving from that. So it can happen, and you just have to be careful not to get stuck.
But it's really important that we encourage other people in the creative field, because they are downplayed sometimes, or a lot of times. So
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
make, and it's all not also, happiness is not about making money either, but I'm just saying you can make a living at, and find tons of joy and happiness and everything, being creative and everything, but you got to stay the course.
You can't give up, and don't give up on yourself.
Right.
And I mean, there's a difference between constructive criticism of, hey, maybe you need to build this skill a little bit before you take that first step without checking for water. So there's a little bit of that, which is constructive. But then there's the difference between somebody who just dismisses. I mean, look at all of the innovation around the internet, all of the innovation around what's come out of, the space program, and how much business that spurred, and how many people built things in garages and they turned into huge companies, that employ, tens of thousands of people. So it can happen, and it's possible, and you just have to, but if you give up, you're never going to know.
And I also think it's great that you have it in you, and not everyone does. You are also, like me, are a big networker and everything. And it is also important. Sometimes writers or artists, a lot of times they're introverts, and you do have to step outside of yourself, because the next person you talk to, you never know what that connection is going to make. And like even me, like you're not in what I get out of a networking group is like, I'm not an expert in every field. I wear all the hats, but I'm still not an expert. So sometimes it's like you're writing your book or whatever, but like how to market it, or what venue to speak at, or these schools that you got connected with. It's like networking and just meeting people. And it doesn't always have to be a networking meeting, but sometimes, I just want to say, like, introverted or quiet people, you do need to try to reach out and face your fears and say hello. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a big presentation, and a phone call can lead, or an email can just lead to so many things. And you have those aha moments, like, I never knew that I could do this, or I could sell it here, or I could, be introduced to a whole nother genre of people.
Yeah, the first time I went to a critique group, I just went. I didn't, I found them on meetup.com and they were local and I just went. I didn't know anybody and I just showed up. And I'm pretty outgoing. Like, I wouldn't call myself an introvert, but that was a little scary. It was a little scary with the first drafts of what I was trying to write. And one thing that came out of a critique, there's some pieces of the book where the boys, that gets a little messy. Boys get messy, right? They get sick, they're lost in the jungle, etc. But I was reading some, earlier versions, and the guy who ran the book, whose name was Steve, and he said, "When do they go to the bathroom?" He's like, "These boys are stuck in the lifeboat for days before they're actually found." He's like, "Don't they have to go to the bathroom?" And I thought, yeah, they should probably have to go to the bathroom. And so that just sparked a whole scene about them figuring out how to go to the bathroom, and then a whole scene of explaining what the head was, right, on the ship. So I did so much research on the age of sail, on these ships, on the history of the time. And a lot of that didn't make it onto the page, but I feel like it flavored the descriptions and the imagery, the research. And every time I got blocked and I couldn't figure out what my next step is, I would just delve into some research. And then it would always uncover something I never thought of. And but I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it's funny you should talk about fear, because this podcast I was listening to was talking about that very thing, about the shyness and social isolation, right? We've had all of these children, in two-dimensional worlds, trying to learn, which is very, very easy for some, not so easy for most. And these kids, stuck in that in that hybrid world, or the two-dimensional world, during the pandemic. And they talked about being an introvert and learning how to take that first step, and you have to overcome the fear. Fear is normal.
Right.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. So it's like baby steps. So in this podcast, they were saying, like, in the case of a child, like, you don't want to go to that party, it's loud, it's not your thing, whatever. Go for 20 minutes. You go for 20 minutes and then make up an excuse, and I'll come grab you if you're not comfortable. But at least you tried.
Right.
So with networking, it could be the same thing, because plenty of grownups are terrified of public speaking. They
Right.
don't like just walking into an environment with 50 million people there that they don't know. So you go for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And you see who you fall over. And if you still feel uncomfortable after giving it a shot, then you can back out, go home, and then you just try again the next time. And it's just baby steps, baby steps. And I'm an extrovert, and it was very scary to me.
Yep.
And when I network, yeah.
There's all kinds of fears, like,
Mhm.
just like you said, writing blocks of fear,
Mhm.
marketing, getting it out's a fear. We're always being challenged in so many ways, in, like, every aspect of our life. but what doesn't break us makes us stronger,
Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was very scary to put my book out in the universe. Really, really scary. But over time, and the critique group taught me this, that not, sometimes it's not, not everybody likes historical fiction, action adventures. Those are not necessarily my readers that wouldn't be immersed in that type of a story. But the critiquing really taught me, and it actually built my confidence. And if not for that writers group, and then we splintered off, a few of us, into a smaller group. I mean, I would never have built the skills that I built to write, and then to be able to hear when something's not working.
Yeah.
So I had my whole first draft of my manuscript, and a friend of my mom's was a published author, like in the memoir nonfiction space, but I really wanted her to read my work. So I gave it to her, dropped it off at her house. And she got back to me a few weeks later and she said, I really like your writing, but the first 7 chapters were all this relationship stuff with Robert and his family and his siblings and the leading up to him running away. The action doesn't start till chapter 8. So she said, I hate to tell you that I really think you need chapter 8 to be chapter 1. So I took a sample of both. I brought it to my critique group and I read a couple of the original pages and then a couple of chapter 8 pages. And it was unanimous that the best first chapter was chapter 8. So I literally had to highlight 6 months of research and writing and just take those 7 chapters and cut them and put them in a separate document. And that was painful. It was really, really painful, but I needed to hear that it wasn't working to have those 7 chapters in the beginning of the work. It just wasn't working. And I couldn't cry and curl up in the fetal position or insist it's staying and be stubborn about it. Like I had to listen to the people that had been through it, the people that were my beta readers, and I did. And the book is way better for it. So,
well, you're giving me it's kind of a flashback actually to so in high school I took creative writing as well, and I'm no big writer, but I do really like creative writing. But in college, I took a course that was so amazing, and it's kind of weird how you get flashbacks.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, you're giving me a flashback because it was a course where you actually read the book and got a chance to meet the author. So.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we read 4 books, and we met 4 authors during the class. So and it's just so that I'm just it was a unique experience then, and I'm really appreciating it now speaking with you because I feel
mm-hmm.
This time, and I will be true to my followers, I have not read her book, but you know what? I'm buying it. But I feel now I'm I'm hearing all about this, and I'm okay, now I'm I've got to read this book, and it's actually is the type of book I'm not a big reader and everything, but this is the type of genre I do like and everything. So
well, the audiobook is in progress right now. So I found a British author, and he is working on recording book 1 and book 2. So hopefully before the end of the summer, I'm going to have the audiobooks finally out after a long period.
Well, that makes me very excited because I love to walk and listen, and that's why I think all these different formats are so good.
Oh, fantastic! I mean, when I took a creative writing class before I went away to school, I did my senior year. I did the local community college. I did some credits, and I had a fantastic creative writing instructor whose name I cannot remember for the life of me, but I was reading a lot of Stephen King at that time. So my influence was horror, right? Mm-hmm. So, and everybody who read Pet Sematary, by the way, said, don't read the last few chapters at night. But I was going like crazy and I couldn't put it down. And I was just completely engrossed. And I was up to 3 o'clock in the morning finishing that book. And then I couldn't go to sleep.
Well, I'm a horror fan, and I'm a Stephen King fan as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And actually he wrote a book about writing, which is, if you want to write or you have any aspiration, I would point everyone to that book. But anyway, in the class, I wrote a short story that was scary. It was in that genre, the horror genre, and I'd forgotten all about it. And I was going through old papers, purging whatever I was doing. And I found my writing folder where I'd written a poem about a friend of mine who was killed in a car accident in high school. I found, some of the other creative writing works they did in that class. And I found that story and I read it. I mean, it needs some work. I was 18 when I read, when I originally wrote, it definitely needs some cleaning up. But I was like, wow, this is really dark. I'm not really a dark person, but this was really dark. And one of these days I may clean it up and try to submit it to some magazine or whatever. But I mean, but that just goes your influence is your influence, right? So, and that was just where my head was at the time. I also read a lot of Daniel Steele, which was deep romance or whatever. So it was a bit of a juxtaposition there with the horror and the romance. But
well, anyway. I just think it's incredible hearing the stories behind the story.
Mhm.
That really, I like a lot of documentaries and stuff and learning about people. So this has been a incredible Midnight Connection, and I thank you for all your motivation. Facing your fears, staying the
Mhm.
course, and I think he might have not told you to write the book, but I do believe in the universe and it has a greater plan. So I think his plan was for you to write the book when he left you the journal.
Maybe.
He didn't say the words out loud.
He did not. He did not. He just I mean, I think my grandparents, and I dedicate both novels to them, and they're very, very dear to me, and their memory is very dear to me. And I think they would have been proud of it. I mean, it's too bad that I mean, they lived very long, wonderful lives, but it's too bad that they're not here to see it. But I feel it. I feel the energy of, that they're there. So it's all good. And I would just say, if you want to write, get it on the page. Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about the structure. Don't worry whether it's in an outline or it's succinct. Just whatever's in your head, get it on the page. And that could also mean getting one of those, like, I'm playing with a pen because I talk with my hands. So I'm trying not to be like crazy with my hands. But they have those small digital devices, or you can use your phone and just record it. Go into your Google Docs. You're driving. Well, don't do this I mean, you can talk while you're driving, but don't change your phone around when you're driving. But if you set it up in advance, I've done that. I've actually written drafts of blogs for freelance writing clients in the car. Before I start going, I hit record and I just talk through my idea of what I want to write. And then that is kind of my beginning point. So regardless of whether it's a short story or an essay or something for school or your college, whatever it is, just get it on the page. And then figure it out, but don't not do it.
You're definitely an extrovert, but I can tell, like, a lot of people say about me, like, I'm an artist, but I also have business sense and, like, I got the business side, but you are definitely a teacher. You're a writer and a teacher. I just hear it flowing out of you. And
I just missed my calling. I really did. I should have been a teacher. I don't know what I was thinking.
well, you can pivot again, or you can do both. You can have dual careers because, I mean,
Yeah,
you are teaching. I mean, you're obviously teaching these young kids, but I can just hear it coming out of you, and that's amazing. I just think that's an amazing quality that
thank you. Thank
you're
you. I really
already
enjoy it. I have to say, I really enjoy
you're,
it. So
you're clearly an incredible writer, but what's also amazing, and it's coming out in this interview, is that you are a teacher, and I think that's great. So.
mhm. Thank you. Thank you. This is like a feel good YouTube show.
Well, that's what it's
But
supposed
it's
to
feel
be.
good. Yeah.
To motivate other people, but I just want you to know that that's what I see in you.
Mhm.
That you are not only a good writer, but you're giving back to society, teaching these kids. But I see in the future this having lots of legs, and you inspiring other people and teaching other people um, on how to be a great writer, and
Mhm.
also how to get through life. Staying the course.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel like I just one quick like anecdotal thing just popped into my head, and I don't know if we have time or we don't have
Oh,
time.
fine.
We have whatever, right? So
We can talk to midnight if we
yeah,
want.
I can talk to midnight, which I can. I'll talk to a tree if that's the only thing around. So it's okay. But so when you're writing, or when I'm writing, or most people, they do a lot of research, right? So I was doing a lot of research. So it's age of sail, and they're in war footing, and I was trying to research, how did they treat these soldiers? What happened? This. And then so I was Googling amputation methods in the mid 1800s, age of sail, like all kinds of stuff. And I often think that if I ever get an opportunity to, speak to groups about writing, that I might say something like, I'm very thankful to the NSA or Homeland Security or the FBI who might be picking up on some search items, who can recognize that I'm really just a writer trying to figure out how to write a scene, and I'm not some crazy person Googling how to amputate limbs. So just a shout out to anybody, about that. So it's just one of those funny things.
Well, you might, you might have inspired. Who knows, I might get a whole bunch of writers coming on soon.
That would be
So,
great. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of room for all of us to support each other. Somebody else's success does not mean my failure, and my success doesn't mean someone else's failure. There's plenty of room. And I read a few articles that actual hard books in hands, like paperbacks and hardcovers, are making a comeback. But any way that you can be creative and get it on the paper or get it out into the universe, and the writers community I've found is incredibly supportive.
right.
So I haven't found anybody that was like, well, I write in the same space and I don't want to help you promote your book, or I haven't seen that at all. Nobody's ever said that to me. So.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much for all your inspiration. And, if people can contact you, they have access to your website in the description and
Yeah,
everything.
thank you.
And I hope everyone gets the book. I'm going to get the book. Tell me when the audio book is out. I will definitely be walking and listening. And thank you. Thank you so much.
No, well, thank you for the opportunity. And I know we're going to keep in touch because we definitely have like this nice synergy personality connection. So I'm really so glad that I met you and we were connected through our mutual other connection. So, and we're not even really in the same state, right? So it's just supposed to show you.
Yep. So, well, thank
So
you so much.
thank you so much. And I really enjoyed it.